There is someone walking around today who knows, deep inside, that their life could have turned out completely differently if you had not entered it. And the strangest part is this: you may have no idea what you actually did. You probably remember a conversation, a small kindness, a message, a moment when you simply showed up. To you, it may have seemed ordinary. To them, it became the moment everything changed. Now this person is preparing to reveal the truth. They are about to tell someone how you saved them. But when you discover exactly what happened after your paths crossed, you may never look at your own impact the same way again. Because this story did not begin with a dramatic rescue. There were no flashing lights. No crowd watching. No applause. It began quietly, during one of the darkest periods of this person's life. They were carrying something they refused to show anyone. People around them thought they were fine. They laughed at the right moments. They answered messages. They handled responsibilities. They smiled when someone looked at them. But underneath that appearance was a person who felt completely lost. Something had collapsed in their world. Maybe it was a relationship. Maybe a dream. Maybe a betrayal. Maybe a failure they couldn't forgive themselves for. Whatever happened, it had convinced them that the future they once imagined was disappearing. And then you appeared. Here is where this becomes unbelievable. You weren't trying to rescue anyone. You were simply being yourself. You said something. You did something. You treated them differently from the way others had been treating them. And without realizing it, you interrupted a chain of events that could have taken their life in a completely different direction. They remember the moment far more clearly than you do. In fact, they have replayed it. Again. And again. And again. There was something about your words that stayed with them. You may have told them they were capable of more. You may have defended them when everyone else misunderstood them. You may have listened when nobody else had patience. You may have simply looked at them with respect during a time when they had stopped respecting themselves. Whatever it was, they carried that moment home. And later that night, when everything became quiet, your words returned. That was the beginning. But what happened afterward is the part they have never told you. Because your influence didn't stop with that one moment. It started changing their decisions. One decision became another. Then another. And slowly, without you even knowing it, the direction of their entire life began shifting. There was a choice they almost made. A choice they now believe would have destroyed something important. They were close. Closer than anyone around them realized. Then they remembered you. Not necessarily your face first. Your words. Your energy. The way you made them feel like their story wasn't finished. And they changed their mind. Think about that. Someone made a life-changing decision because of something you probably forgot saying. But this person never forgot. And now they are about to reveal something else. They tried to find you afterward. Maybe not immediately. Maybe pride stopped them. Maybe circumstances separated you. Maybe they convinced themselves that someday they would have the perfect opportunity to tell you. But they kept wondering about you. Where were you? What were you doing? Did you remember them? Did you understand what you had done? They even imagined the conversation. They pictured themselves standing in front of you and saying, "You probably don't remember this, but you changed everything for me." Yet every time the opportunity came close, something stopped them. Because how do you explain something that enormous to someone who didn't even realize they were doing it? How do you tell somebody that one ordinary moment in their life became an extraordinary turning point in yours? So they stayed silent. Until now. Something recently happened that made them realize silence is no longer enough. They were talking with someone about the past. At first, the conversation was casual. Then someone asked them a question. "How did you get through that time?" They went quiet. Because they knew the real answer. You. Your name came into their mind. Your face. Your voice. That moment. And for perhaps the first time, they finally told part of the story. They said there was someone who entered their life at exactly the right time. Someone who probably never understood how important they became. Someone whose words changed what happened next. The person listening became curious. Who? And suddenly your name was being spoken in a room you weren't even in. But wait, because that wasn't the shocking part. The shocking part was what they said next. They admitted that if you had not appeared when you did, their life today might look nothing like it does. Everything they built afterward could have disappeared before it even began. The people they later met. The opportunities they accepted. The confidence they rebuilt. The dreams they returned to. All of it traces back, in their mind, to one turning point. You. And this person has been carrying gratitude that has grown heavier with time. Not because gratitude is painful. Because they don't know how to repay something that cannot be measured. Money can't measure it. A gift can't measure it. A simple "thank you" feels too small. They have asked themselves what they could possibly do to make you understand. And that question is leading toward the revelation. Because this person isn't only planning to tell you what happened. They want to show you what happened afterward. There is something you don't know about their current life. Something they accomplished. Something they survived. Something they created. Something they became. And somewhere behind that accomplishment is a piece of you. They know it. They have told themselves this privately. When I finally speak to them, I need them to know. That conversation may be more emotional than either of you expects. Because there is another layer. During the same period when you were helping this person without realizing it, you were dealing with your own struggles. That's what makes this story so powerful. You weren't standing on some perfect mountain handing wisdom down to somebody beneath you. You had your own problems. Your own disappointments. Your own nights of uncertainty. Maybe you were questioning your own worth. Maybe you wondered whether anything you were doing mattered. Maybe nobody was telling you that you were making a difference. Yet while you were doubting yourself, someone else was quietly surviving because of the hope you gave them. That is the irony they cannot forget. You may have believed you were barely holding yourself together. They saw strength. You may have believed your words weren't important. They remembered every sentence. You may have thought you were simply being kind. They experienced it as a turning point. And now something inside them is pushing them to stop keeping this secret. They want you to know. But before that happens, there is one detail you need to understand. This person once misunderstood you. Yes. The person who now credits you with changing their life did not always understand who you were. At one point, they may even have judged you incorrectly. They thought your confidence meant you didn't struggle. They thought your distance meant you didn't care. They thought your honesty was too intense. Maybe they assumed you would eventually forget them. But after everything happened, they realized something. You were one of the few people who had been genuine with them. Others told them what they wanted to hear. You told them something they needed to hear. Others disappeared when things became uncomfortable. You remained present, even if only for a moment. Others saw what they could get from them. You saw a human being. That difference became impossible to forget. Years, months, or even weeks may have passed, but the memory never lost its power. In fact, time made it stronger. Because as this person rebuilt their life, they started understanding exactly how close they had been to losing everything they now value. Every new blessing made them think about the moment before the turnaround. Every achievement reminded them of where they almost ended up. And every time they looked backward, somehow, there you were. Then something unexpected happened. They started doing for other people what you once did for them. They encouraged someone. They helped someone believe again. They showed up when another person was struggling. And suddenly they understood your impact on an even deeper level. Your kindness had multiplied. You helped one person. That person helped another. That person may have helped someone else. A chain began from a moment you probably considered insignificant. Imagine discovering that something you said years ago has traveled through people you have never met. That is what they are about to make you understand. But there is still a secret. They kept something from that period. Maybe a message. Maybe a photograph. Maybe a note. Maybe a screenshot. Maybe something you gave them. They couldn't throw it away. Every time they considered deleting it or putting it somewhere forgotten, they stopped. Because it represented the dividing line between who they were before and who they became afterward. And if you ever see it again, you may instantly remember the moment. You might say, "You still have that?" And their answer will tell you everything. Yes. Because to you, it was an object. To them, it became proof. Proof that somebody believed in them when they couldn't believe in themselves. This person has even wondered whether you needed to hear the same words someday. Whether perhaps the reason they survived your chapter in their life was so that one day they could return and remind you of your own value. Because life has a strange way of reversing roles. Sometimes the person you encourage becomes the person who later encourages you. Sometimes the person you lift becomes strong enough to lift someone else. And sometimes you never understand your importance until someone returns from your past carrying evidence. That may be exactly what is happening here. They aren't returning as the same person. They've changed. They've learned. They've matured. They have seen parts of life that changed the way they think about relationships, loyalty, timing, and human connection. And one conclusion keeps returning. Some people enter your life for years and leave almost nothing behind. Other people enter for a moment and leave fingerprints on your entire future. You were the second kind. That is why this revelation may catch you completely off guard. You might initially think they are exaggerating. You may tell them, "I didn't do anything." And those words may frustrate them. Because in their mind, you did everything that mattered at exactly the moment it mattered. They don't need you to accept responsibility for their entire life. They simply want you to understand the ripple you created. And when they finally explain the full sequence of events, pieces may begin clicking together. You'll remember their expression. You'll remember how unusually quiet they were. You'll remember a conversation that seemed deeper than normal. Maybe you'll remember feeling strangely compelled to say something encouraging. You didn't know why. You just felt they needed to hear it. And they did. More than you knew. Now here comes the revelation that may change the meaning of this entire story. This person didn't only survive that difficult chapter. They made a promise because of you. A private promise. They promised themselves that if they ever became strong enough, successful enough, stable enough, or brave enough, they would find a way to acknowledge the person who helped them reach that point. You. And recently, they realized that the time had come. Not someday. Now. Because waiting has already cost them enough. They have already imagined too many conversations that never happened. They don't want another year to pass. They don't want circumstances to change before you know the truth. So something is being prepared. Maybe it's a message. Maybe it's a call. Maybe it's an unexpected conversation. Maybe somebody else will mention your name first. But when the truth finally comes out, listen carefully. Because they may struggle to explain it. They may laugh nervously. They may pause. Their voice may change. They may start with something simple like, "There's something I've wanted to tell you for a long time." And you may have absolutely no idea what comes next. Then they'll take you back. Back to that day. Back to that conversation. Back to the version of themselves you barely knew was struggling. They will tell you what happened before they saw you. Then what happened after. And suddenly you will understand why they never forgot. But they may reveal something that shocks you even more. Someone else knows. They have spoken about you before. Maybe a friend. Maybe a relative. Maybe someone close to them today. Your name has become part of the story they tell when explaining how their life changed. Imagine being mentioned to people you've never met because someone says, "There was this person who helped me when I needed it most." You became a chapter in someone else's survival story without knowing the book was even being written. And this is where the meaning becomes bigger than one person. Because how many other moments have you forgotten? How many people remember something kind you did that you barely noticed? How many conversations mattered more than you realized? How many times did you think you were invisible while somebody else was watching you and learning how to keep going? We often measure our impact by applause. By recognition. By messages. By visible results. But some of the greatest things you ever do may happen quietly. You may never see the immediate outcome. A sentence can become someone's courage. A small act can become someone's proof that good people still exist. A moment of patience can stop someone from giving up on themselves. And years later, the person may finally return with the missing half of the story. That is what makes this revelation so emotional. You thought the moment ended. For them, it continued. You went home. They carried it with them. You moved forward. They rebuilt. You forgot. They remembered. And now those two timelines are about to meet again. But there is one final thing this person wants you to understand. They don't want you to think they survived because you magically fixed every problem. They did the work. They fought through difficult days. They made decisions. They rebuilt themselves piece by piece. But you gave them something at the beginning. A reason to believe rebuilding was possible. Sometimes that is all a person needs. Not someone to carry them forever. Just someone who helps them stand once. And that's what you did. You reminded them that the darkest chapter was not the final chapter. You reminded them that one person's rejection did not determine their worth. One failure did not determine their future. One painful season did not determine their entire life. And now they want to return that message to you. Your difficult season isn't your entire story either. Your disappointments aren't the final verdict. The things that didn't work out don't erase the good you have already placed into the world. You may be standing closer to a breakthrough than you realize while still wondering whether your past efforts mattered. Somewhere, there may already be evidence that they did. This person is part of that evidence. They are living differently today because your paths crossed. And when they finally reveal how you affected them, there may be a moment when neither of you knows what to say. Because some truths are too large for immediate words. You may simply sit there thinking about the version of yourself who showed kindness without knowing where it would lead. And perhaps that is the most extraordinary part. You didn't help because you knew there would be a reward. You didn't help because you knew someone would remember. You didn't help because you knew this story would come back. You did what felt right. And the reward became a life that continued moving forward. A life that found another opportunity. A life that eventually smiled again. A life that became strong enough to tell the story. And now that story is coming back toward you. This person has reached a point where hiding their gratitude feels wrong. They need you to know that your presence mattered. They need you to understand that you were not insignificant. They need to finally say the words they should have said long ago. You helped save my life from becoming something I wouldn't recognize. And perhaps the revelation isn't only about what you saved them from. Perhaps it's about what you helped them reach. The relationships they now treasure. The work they now love. The dreams they finally pursued. The person they became. Those things exist because they kept moving. And at one critical point, you helped them choose to keep moving. So when this person finally comes forward, don't immediately dismiss what they tell you. Don't reduce your kindness because it seemed small from your perspective. You never experienced that moment from their side. Listen. Let them finish. Let them tell you where they were mentally and emotionally. Let them explain what your words became after you left. Because you may finally discover something people rarely get the privilege of discovering. The exact moment their kindness changed another person's future. And after they finish speaking, there may be one sentence that stays with you longer than everything else. They may look at you and say, "You thought you were just talking to me that day. But you gave me something to hold on to." That is when everything changes. Because suddenly this story isn't only theirs anymore. It's yours too. The forgotten conversation. The hidden struggle. The decision that changed afterward. The years of silence. The preserved message. The private promise. The people who heard about you without ever meeting you. The strength that traveled from you into them and from them into others. It all leads back to one extraordinary truth. You mattered in a moment when you had no idea you mattered. And somewhere, someone has been waiting for the courage to finally tell you just how much.